Natalie Morris, thanks so much for being here on Get Gutsy.
It's absolutely my pleasure.
Yay. So where are you based right now? Where
I'm
are you?
in New Jersey.
New
In
Jersey.
Jersey.
New
Yeah,
Jersey. And you told me you have a wallpaper project going on.
I do. Yeah. Are you
Exciting.
familiar with these Philip Jeffries paper? There's like wallpaper
No,
so
I'm
back
not a
in that
I'm
it's a
not a
little bit
wallpaper
like,
person myself, but I have seen really cool wallpaper. So I think that's awesome.
yeah. So I'm into this like textured look of things. So
Ah.
yeah, it's very exciting. We're
Okay.
in
And
the
how
midst
long
of
have
it.
you been in New Jersey?
Let's see. My husband and I met in New York City. We both were
Hmm.
working in the media, and we thought when we got pregnant with our first, we're like, oh, we don't need a house in the suburbs. We're fine. And the minute he started to crawl at 10 months, we had a conversation. We're like, we should get a house. We need to get out of here because we had a 1-bedroom apartment and
Yeah.
his crib was in the living room, which a
Oh
lot
yeah.
of people make work, but like we didn't have a proper pantry. We had this like open shelf thing, and he would crawl over to it and try and take out like soy sauce bottles and stuff. And we're like, how do we make this so that it doesn't drive us crazy?
Mhm.
So I know a lot of people have happy childhoods in the city, but we were really happy to find
Girl, you
these
don't have to
suburbs.
explain it to me because
Yeah.
my oldest child was born in New York City also.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were there a bit longer than you. I don't know when you moved, but it was, well, as soon as he was born, I enjoyed being a new mom in the city,
Yeah.
honestly, because you walk around with the stroller and you don't feel lonely because you can like see other moms who are pushing
Right.
strollers and you can kind of, get a conversation going. There was a lot of resources. I joined a new mom support group and then I started leading new mom support groups in the city. But it was when he was 1.5 when it was like, we gotta go. Like
Yeah.
we gotta go. And we moved before he was 2. It was like a few months before he turned 2. And it
Yeah.
was like, again, I get it. Some people bunk up the kids, like 3 kids in a bedroom. We had a 2-bedroom, so
Yeah.
we had that, but it was just, I think you have to get clear on what kind of life you want for your family. And
Right.
one's not like better than the other. It's just what's right for you. All right.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. So you all made that move. And how many kids do you have now?
Now I have 3. So we
Yeah.
have him and then we had 2 girls. And when I think about it, I didn't think about it until just now. But that move was necessary for us because both of us sort of broke apart our careers in the city around the same time. I didn't know that that was going to happen, but it's funny how when a life change is coming, your
Mhm.
life has already made space for that and you just didn't know it. So,
Mhm.
I was losing my job at the time. I thought that I would take another job, but I didn't know if it would be in the city. And my husband was the weekend anchor at Fox News, so he didn't need to be in the city every single day. And so for 6 years just went in on the weekends from New Jersey, which is no big deal at all. A lot of people come
Mhm.
in from New Jersey every day.
Mhm.
And so, but the things that were tying us to New York were just sort of already breaking up. So it made it an easier transition to just create a brand new life in New Jersey. And I don't have family in New Jersey. He doesn't
Mhm.
either.
Mhm.
And so it was like, I just, sort of you'll see as we go through my
Mhm.
life story,
Yeah.
when I need to make a decision about something, I go to the library, I read 5 books on the subject, and then I decide. So I've read all these books by a woman named Diane Radich. She's a academic on schools and, how to find the right schools for your family and how to evaluate, like your kid's educational process. And so I felt really good about New Jersey. I'm from
Uh,
California and people are like,
ah.
why would you like to be in New Jersey? And I'm like, New Jersey has the highest test scores in the country. New Jersey is a great place. And it's very much like I'm from the East Bay.
Yeah.
So it's a lot like Berkeley. There's a lot of enlightened thinkers here.
Mhm.
So many smart people come from New Jersey. I'm
That's
sounding like
fantastic.
a
Jersey
commercial
girl.
from New
You're
Jersey,
like,
but
girl, well, you might as well love where you live because if you
right.
don't, then why are you there?
Well, it's so interesting, right? Because people are like, Jersey. And I'm like, I choose this. I can
Yes.
choose anything now. Like
Yes.
last year, as I talk about my journey, I'll talk about how my husband, he was the last bastion of having like a day job in our family. And he left his job last year in September. So we literally can live anywhere. It doesn't matter where we live.
Totally.
And so we've been talking about this lately, and I was like, where would we go if we didn't want to be? Because New Jersey's expensive.
Right.
Like, would we go to New Zealand? Would we go to, like, we could really go anywhere. And we both thought about it, and we're like, we choose this place. So,
You're choosing. That's so
yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, we live in the Berkshires of Western Massachusetts. So,
Oh,
have
yeah.
you ever been up here? Not too far from New
Yeah.
Jersey.
We did our anniversary in the Northeast this year, but I haven't been up that far.
Okay. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We went leaf peeping in Maine.
Oh yeah. Well, this is like Western Massachusetts. So
Right.
you went even farther, but this is, like for us, we chose this too. And, you sound very similar to me. I'm the type of person I will go read the books and then I become like a pseudo expert on that topic. Like I know you do know more than most because you've read that and then you were able to make those decisions. Okay. So tell me more about what was that corporate gig? You worked in media. What exactly were you doing?
So I was a host for CBS Interactive, which used to be CNET, and then CBS bought them. So I had a daily show. It was a video podcast and sort of their audio. I did audio podcast as well. And so then when CBS bought CNET, I became the technology correspondent for the CBS Early Show. And so I was working on the air for CBS, both for the local news and the network news and online. So I was really busy. And then surprise, along comes my son. And I was one of those idiots who thinks you can do everything with the baby that you did before the baby comes and you just bring the baby. And that works for about 6 weeks. And then they open their eyes and make noises and, it just doesn't work that way. So my life when I came back from maternity leave was not the life that I had left. And that wasn't all my choosing. I had a Me Too moment that forced me out of the workplace. And so I was pretty devastated about it.
Let's just hold on there for a moment.
It's not something
because I was like, that's big, and I honor you and I thank you for sharing that. Gosh, there's so much going on right now. I can just feel it in my bones. Like we're recording this when the trial is still going on, a completely different kind of arena, but still on this topic. For, Dr. Larry Nassar, I use the word doctor kind of like I don't feel like that's what he did. He
did much harm.
He did a lot of harm, abused the gymnasts and just so many girls, not only gymnasts, but just athletes, and just abused his power. And I'm feeling it. So when somebody like you brings that up, I'm like, oh, wait, hold up. Let's talk about that. So there was something that happened to you at work and you just were like, I'm out of here. Did you how did that come to pass? This is before the movement was here, even though these things were happening.
And I have to say, I imagine that so many women that have stories like this are feeling this, that when all of these brave women came forward and began to speak out about what happened to their careers, you feel triggered for what happened to you so long ago, because you're like, I didn't say anything. I dealt with it privately. There's this movement in Hollywood. What's the name of the black dress at the Golden Globes?
Time's Up, that movement. Yeah. Time's Up.
And so a big part of that is discouraging women from signing NDAs. And so what I did was actually speak up for myself, but I did sign an NDA. So I can't tell you all that much about it.
Got it.
And I feel guilty now for having done that as well. Like,
I didn't work at a big company. They have HR. They got all the lawyers, and and so you're afraid. You don't want to hurt yourself anymore.
I was made whole. I did speak out, but I couldn't keep the job. So it was.
You couldn't keep the job because you'd be working with this person.
Because, not necessarily.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know how much I really can.
You needed to go.
And so when all these women have been saying, like, I wish I'd said something, I would have been able to prevent other people from going through this. That's, I guess, where the guilt is that, but I spoke to a woman who was an academic recently about women's rights. And she was like, just speaking up at all was ahead of your time. This was now 7 years ago. And, I didn't know what else to do. And I was brave in as much as I had my husband and he still had his job, and I felt like I was safe. I'm not sure how brave I would have been,
if you would have been a sole income provider for yourself.
Yeah. Would I have just,
you were the,
right. I'm not sure. So I want to make sure now, like, it doesn't help me to tell the specifics of the story, but it does help me to tell everyone else that, and my daughters, that you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to stand for this. You should always
Mm-hmm.
speak out for what's right. And at least they'll know that I did speak out,
Mm-hmm.
if not publicly. And now, because the media is such a gobbledygook of, like everyone is so polarized. If I had said anything,
Mm-hmm.
now only the people who already are on my side are going to say that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And then the people who already feel like that's nonsense or not, it's, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, but I still am sort of processing that. Like I was the other night reading that Selma Hayek story of, and I was like, oh girl, like you and I both, we should have said something louder.
And it's like, I mean, I have my own story. And I, as I'm watching these things, and again, I didn't allow it. Luckily I was in position. I didn't allow it to escalate. My intuition served me really well, which was like, don't go down that road.
Yeah.
And I ended up leaving that job. I left that career because I just knew I didn't want to be in this environment and put myself in a very precarious situation and not be respected for my intellect and why I was there. I'm like, I'm not here to be somebody's toy. Like, that's not, I'm not getting paid. Like, I worked in public relations. It's kind of similar to the media world in my first career, and, totally different thing. And it's like, not even worth talking the details either. So I get it. But I think I'm so glad you brought that up, and it is a piece of your story because we're seeing it now. And I too have a daughter. I have 2 sons and a daughter. That's kind of my line. My boys are the oldest. And it's just for her, especially to know you don't have to put up with any bullshit. Like that's the thing. And even for, I even had a conversation with my oldest son. The younger ones, they're not there yet. But, it's hard as parents sometimes to know, like, when do you even, like, how do you talk about like their bodies and making sure that people aren't, touching their bodies in inappropriate ways. You can't just assume that, because we know better, that everyone in the world is kind, that everyone in the world is healthy. And, you just want to make sure that you're doing your job as a mother to let them know, hey, your body is yours. Nobody is allowed to touch it. Anything happens that makes you uncomfortable, come to me no matter what, like those kinds of things. And so that's really, I think, what's happening right now is our eyes are being opened. We, especially as parents, are seeing our job, even when people in power. And that's really how the work dynamic was. You have these people in power.
Yeah.
So you're like, well, they're my boss, or they're the big client, or they're the whatever. And so you felt like your voice was muted. But I'm so grateful that we're living in this time where we are speaking up and we're freaking being believed.
I mean, being in network news, like we were girls, we were young girls who were valued on the way we looked, and we would bring it, like they put a ton of makeup on us and beautiful clothes and like polished us up really nice. And some of the stories that my friends and I had, mine was not even the most egregious, were so awful. And we never, ever, ever thought that there would be a turning of the tide.
Wow.
We just never thought. And I remember a friend of mine telling me this crazy story over Christmas. And I was like, you can sue him for that. And she was like, where would it get me? Like, because you can't go up against him. And, because of who that person was. And so my husband, actually, he worked with Gretchen Carlson. He was the weekend anchor at Fox and Friends, and she was the weekday anchor. And when she spoke up, it was really her voice that launched this whole movement. That's sort of the way I see it.
Right.
Anyway.
Right.
And I wrote her this letter. Like, I'm so in awe of you for doing this. And I know that it will, not only does it take a lot of courage just to speak up, but then it takes a lot of courage to reinvent yourself, because now you don't have that marquee job that made you who you were. And that was really hard for me. And so in hindsight, I'm so glad that happened, because otherwise I would have been one of those ladies who just sticks with the network and does what the network tells me to do, and never owned my own brand, and never thought that I could use my voice to empower people for finances, which is what my message is all about. I would never, never, never have done that. And so I'm really glad that happened. At the time, clearly I wasn't. And I suffered a humongous loss of ego.
Right. Your identity. Who are
Yeah.
you now? Because now you don't work for CBS.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I still like, I got a freelance contract at NBC. I still have one. So it looks
Okay.
good if like, you know, someone who I went to high school with Facebooks me at like, whoa, she works for NBC, right? Like it's impressive.
Well, I'm sure the CBS got
But-
you there too. It's like all
Right.
those things make those connections.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But broadcast news, like just doing stuff on, I used to call my, the segments that I did on Today's Show because I was the tech person.
Mm-hmm.
I called them shit on the table, where it's like you just lay out like a Kindle and an iPad and, you know, like whatever. And I'm like, here's this and here's this. And
Vanna White.
yeah. And so, you know, one day I'm like, I don't want to do shit on a table anymore. I want to do broadcasting that actually empowers people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really have decided, like just one day they called me up and they're like, we want to do, you know, best gadgets for Black Friday. And I was like, no, I don't do that anymore.
You said no.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, and I, like my husband and I were like, wow, you really said no to the Today Show. And I'm like, no more shit on a table. I just don't do it. And so I decided that I'm going to use my voice to empower other women the way that I did, because after I lost that job at CBS, we moved into the new house.
Mm-hmm.
And I remembered asking my agent, I was like, did they call back? You know, I met with CNN, I met with all kinds of networks.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't going as fast as I wanted, but at the same time, I wasn't really willing to take a full-time job anymore. Anyway,
Right.
I wanted something more part-time now that I was out of the full-time workforce.
Yep.
And it just wasn't like going the way I thought it should go.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I said, okay, my money's dried up.
Mm-hmm.
And my husband's still making money, but I was very proud about like having my own money as well. And I said, okay, if I'm not going to bring a regular paycheck to this family, I'm going to become really, really good at personal finance so that my efforts are just as valuable as his paycheck. So I will make his paycheck worth too with my efforts. And I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to do that, but I thought I'm just going to take it one step at a time. So I sat down and I wrote out a balance sheet, which my dad had taught me to do. So I just like listed all of our assets, which was like his 401k, a couple stock accounts, the value of our house. We had like a Scott trade account. And then I listed all of our liabilities, which was our house payment, our car payments. We had some credit card and some other things.
Yep.
And then you subtract the two. So then you know what your net worth is. Like pretty easy balance sheet, right? Yep. And I decided I will start with one line item on the balance sheet and I will get really good at doing that thing. And then I'll take another line item. And so I just picked up a book at the library called Exchange Traded Funds for Dummies. And it helped me learn to sort of evaluate what my investments were. And it really, so, and then like that took me to the next thing. It was like I followed Hansel and Gretel trail. It was like that pointed to me to something else, to something else. Then I learned to really minimize our liabilities. And I really became very well versed in personal finance, so much so that my husband and I then, he at the same time was going through this transition for himself where he wanted to invest in real estate. And so we made a plan because I was so good at managing the money that he was so good at finding off-market real estate investments. And so we decided one day, we came up with this idea of the freedom number because he was in contract negotiation at Fox. And they would do this thing, this is crazy, where they loved him. They didn't want him to leave, but they would, contract time would come around and they just wouldn't return his calls. Like just, like he'd still be working. He went 6 months many times without, like his agent would be like, I don't know, I don't call us back. And he would just work without a contract. And then they come around to him and be like, yeah, great, here's your new contract. But that's a mind meld,
Totally. Did he have any say in that contract, or they just were like, here you go?
He did a little bit. I mean, like it was always a pretty reasonable rate. And, and like we couldn't complain because he worked weekends. So, I have my husband home to do like ballet classes and like pickups and drop-offs. And so it's not just me. So we lived such a comfortable life based on that job that we never rocked the boat. But then we also like had our lifestyle around that paycheck. And so when they wouldn't call us back, we'd be like, can we make our mortgage next month? Because we don't even know, right? Our life is designed around this job. And so once we had invested in 2 properties already, and they started to cash flow. And he has a really great story about how he got his hair on fire about investing in real estate.
Uh-huh.
And I was on board for my own reasons, because I really understood like the rich dad, poor dad philosophy. And I already was reading so many books about like this philosophy anyway. So we had these 2 investments, they were going well. And I was sitting in his office one day while the kids napped. And I was like, did they call you back? Did you hear from your agent? And he was like, no. And I was like, well, what if next time, like next contract, I was like, I know you're going to get this contract. They will eventually call you back. I was like, but what if next contract negotiation, we owned enough in passive income that you didn't need it, that they could come to you or they couldn't. And we could just tell them to like, who cares, and then it's up to us. And he jumped out of his chair in his office and he went to his whiteboard and he's like, how do we figure that out? How do we figure out what we need? So we came up with this idea of the freedom number, which is what you need in passive income to live off so that you don't need your day job. You can work in the job that you want. We hit the freedom number in early 2017. And then he decided, and he had just had another contract. So he renewed his contract at Fox in December of 2016. So he had 3 years there. And early in the year, we hit the freedom number. And he's like, well, I'll probably finish out this contract with Fox. And then, I won't do another one since we've hit the freedom number. And at the same time, he'd been building his own company around helping other people invest in real estate and also in really empowering other investors too. So it really became our mission to help other people understand their finances, empower themselves in their finances, and also like create a plan for passive income so that they weren't always a slave to their day jobs.
Right.
So then September rolled around and the media just got uglier and uglier and the news got uglier and uglier. And one day he just decided, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't be a part of it. And specifically around like certain events that were really bothering him, like, and it was just like, it was an ugly time. And so he left before 2 years before his contract ended because we were just kind of like, we don't need this,
Wow.
Yeah. But also, we had planned for that. We were very deliberate about the fact that we wouldn't need the next contract and we hit it early. And so, we could say thanks, but no thanks for this day job.
That's a wonderful feeling. I love this story. This is very powerful. I know our listeners are getting a ton of value from this. You mentioned, I want to dig in a little deeper here, when you were reading that one book, Exchange Traded Funds for Dummies.
Yeah.
Did I say that correctly? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, great. And you started realizing, okay, you can minimize your liabilities. Let's go in there because I know that's an area that I think people could take action on as a result of listening to this. So what were some things that you all did to minimize those liabilities that could be thought starters for those who are tuning in right now?
Okay. So one thing that I would love for everyone to just chew on when they turn off this podcast, if nothing else, is this quote from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which the whole philosophy is that the rich don't work for paychecks, right? So his biggest thing is that the rich buy assets, the poor buy liabilities. So most people design their life around just being able to pay for their liabilities. So they'll find a house and they'll think, can I afford it month to month based on what my paycheck gives me? But that's a hamster wheel because now you're a slave to the paycheck and the liability. Right? And so most people, if you look at your budget, if you look at the money that comes into your house, most of it is already spoken for by liabilities, a house payment, a car payment, a student loan, whatever, right? Rich people don't do that. They take the money that's coming in and they find a way to use it to buy something that performs. Now, what's a performing asset? Real estate, right? So we own most of our real estate free and clear. So these renters pay us rent every month and we get to keep it. You can do it with a debt service. That's, that's for another podcast. So what's another performing asset? You could invest in your friend's bakery, right? And then you're an investor in that. And then she pays you quarterly or whatever. You can invest in this really great book that everyone should read called Tax-Free Wealth. He talks about local organic farming is also a very tax-friendly investment.
Mm-hmm.
You can invest in art if that's your thing. Now, you
Mm-hmm.
can also invest in the stock market. It's really, really hard to live off of dividends.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it's really hard to create passive income in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we decided was that we didn't want the money coming into our house going towards those liabilities. We wanted to free ourselves from those liabilities to our best ability and funnel our money into performing assets. And we looked at our asset column, and it's like primary home, car, a stock account. Those things do not perform very well at all. You can't live off your primary home,
Right.
Or your car. Your car is not appreciating,
Right.
and very few people can live off of their stock accounts. And some people just think, oh, the 401k is what I'll retire on. But the average withdrawal of a 401k at full maturity is $90,000, and you're taxed on it. So the 401k is a big old marketing ploy that really bothers me. So what we did, we looked at that 401k. There were really high fees that we were paying inside of those funds. And we learned that you could take a loan out of your 401k and pay yourself back the interest. And you are allowed to take up to $50,000 or 50% the value. So my husband, when I first started this, he'd been at this job for 6 years, I guess. So he had about $90,000. So we were able to take $50,000 out of our 401k, and you set the terms of that loan. So we said we want to pay this back in, I think, 18 months at 4% interest. Okay. So now, not only do we maximize our contribution to the 401k, but we're putting more money than the allotted $16,000 because we can pay ourselves back interest in the loan, right?
Got it.
So now I have this check. It takes like 3 minutes. You just go, we went on Fidelity. We asked for the loan. It's not, you don't sell anything and you don't withdraw. It's a loan. And it's allowed by most custodials, but most people like the Susie Ormans of the world or the Dave Ramseys are like, never do that.
Right.
And I don't like that because, again, you're not going to live on your 401k. I'm sorry, but you're not.
Right.
Nobody is. So we decided to take that asset. And so now that's a performing asset, right? Because I'm paying myself back that interest.
Right.
And we knocked out our liabilities with it. So we had some credit card debt. We got rid of it. And then instead of paying the interest to the credit card company, I'm paying interest back to myself.
To yourself.
So that's bye-bye 12%,
Totally.
interest rate on the credit card.
Totally.
Then we paid off a car as well. And we did that we ended up doing that a couple times, taking those loans out, and we ended up buying investment real estate because most of the things we buy are $50,000 or less. So we could buy a $40,000 property that performs at 12%, right? I'm getting like $800 a month on that. And so now I've taken that like, okay performing asset into a really great performing asset, but it's performing twice as much because I'm paying myself back the interest.
Yes.
So, there are so many ways to use the money that you already have in your asset column in order to knock out your liabilities, but people don't think this way because the banks don't want you to.
Right. Well, because the banks want you to borrow from them. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
And they want you to borrow from them.
And put money into 401ks and IRAs that are high fee funds, right?
Got it.
Yeah.
So what you've done and your advice is to put the money in higher performing assets. That these other classes like the 401ks and the IRAs have been heavily marketed, but they're heavily marketed by the financial industry, and they're the ones reaping the rewards more than the investor.
Yeah. So my husband, when he left his job in September, he called up Fidelity and was like, I'd like to roll my 401k into a self-directed IRA, which means we decide what it goes in. It doesn't go in stock-based accounts.
Right.
And so they said, oh, really? Are you sure you want to do that? Because you can keep it here with Fidelity and just roll it into an IRA and we'll stay your custodial. And he's like, no, I really don't want to. And he's like, are you sure? Because it's doing pretty well at 2%. And we were like, 2%? You can take that and shove it up your butt, because if we take it and buy investment real estate, we can make 10% on it. I mean, even sometimes like that money in an IRA, you can't touch, right? But you can do a ton with it. So I have an IRA from CBS. He has an old IRA from an old job, and now this one from Fox. And a lot of times we have other investor friends who either are short on cash or what have you, but they know where to find these deals. We create notes for them out of our IRAs that are that for 8%. We're like, yeah, we'll loan you this money at 8% because I don't want to put it in the stock market where it makes 4%, but is 1% fees.
Right.
3%, whoop-de-doo.
So you can pull it out of the IRA too, and it's the same kind of deal where you're paying.
You can't loan to yourself.
You can't loan to yourself. You can loan.
But we loan to friends or other investors or colleagues. Yeah. And so it's just another line item on my balance sheet that I've become really good at is my IRAs. So we don't hold them with investment banks anymore. We self-direct them. So now and basically that means that you put it in a place that allows you to invest it wherever you want, as long as you don't benefit from it right now. So I can't buy a primary house and I can't buy a house for my mother or my kids. But I could lend to my cousin or I could invest in someone else's real estate fund. I could invest in my friend's bakery. I could, and then you create these notes and then the money that goes back into the investment in the bakery or the real estate goes straight back into the fund.
Wow. This is so exciting. This is so exciting. This is awesome. So what would be, if someone is listening, is like, oh my God, I got it. I'm getting on board.
Do all those things.
I'm going to do all of the things. What would be, cause and for me too. And I've read a lot of finance books. I've read wealth generation, all that kind of stuff. Not as much as you, I can tell. So what would be, you mentioned a few books. Is there what would be that first book that you would suggest somebody go read?
Well, I'm assuming that most of your audience is pretty entrepreneurial.
Yes.
And so I think one big mistake that entrepreneurs make these days is they don't incorporate themselves. Even my graphic designer, who I think is the loveliest girl, I don't know why I called her a girl. She's a woman. She's a grown woman. I think because she's younger than me, I used that, but that was kind of derogatory. But I pay her in her own name. And I'm like, girl, aren't you reading these posts? Because if you incorporate yourself, you are subject to such more favorable taxation. And so if you are doing your own business, whether it's hair braiding or, graphic design or whatever it is, if you take your paychecks in NATALI Morris, the lady, you have to pay a self-employment tax and your tax rate is higher. And so I think a great way to start to think about not only passive income, but really taking advantage of your own family finances and taking it seriously like you do your career is tax-free wealth.
Okay.
Right. Now, this person has become my friend. And a lot of times this happens is I'll read this book and I'm like, oh, yes, Queen, I am all about what you just said and I need to know you. And I will just reach out to that person. And Tom Weaver is not a queen. He's a king of the tax world. But I think he's amazing because he really understands how the tax code is written to favor entrepreneurialism. I don't know if that was a word, but I just said.
Entrepreneurs and entrepreneurialism. Yes, whatever. I get it. Tax-free wealth. Tax-free wealth.
And he will teach you how to incorporate yourself into a business so that you are paying the lowest amount of taxes and starting to funnel your money into passive income. And so you're really maximizing, because as Robert Kiyosaki says, taxes are an investor's biggest expense. And I used to sort of be of the mindset, if there's enough money, it'll be fine. And that's absolutely not true. Because when there's enough money, it's absolutely not fine. It's worse. And so, and I think most people don't realize that if you're a paycheck employee where you just work for CBS, right? Those of you, I guess I'm not in that category anymore, but those of us who take paychecks work for the government from January to May. And you don't keep that money. All the money from January to May goes to the government, and then you keep June to December. And that sucks.
Yeah.
But that is not the way businesses work.
Right.
And so when you see Apple pays 14%, taxes, there's a reason for that.
Because the way they've set it up. Yeah.
Right. I mean, so I think my biggest eye-opening lesson from that book was that if NATALI Morris, the lady, makes $100, say in a speaking engagement, right? then Natalie Morris, the lady, is taxed on $100.
Yes.
But if Natalie Morris LLC makes $100 and has $50 in expenses,
yes,
then Natalie Morris LLC is only taxed on $50.
Correct.
Now, what do you want to be taxed on, right?
You got it, girl.
So I think that's a really important lesson. And I think he is renewing his book because of the new tax law. So not all of those things apply.
Right.
Everything I just talked about still does. In fact, more so. Because if nothing else, the Trump administration has shown that it favors entrepreneurs, and paycheck employees can suck it. So.
Oh my gosh, I'm with you. I have this, great info on you, and I know it says here what stuff you like to talk about, why businesses should use the Profit First method. Have you also read Profit First by Mike McCallum?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I read that book a few months ago. I started implementing that system in my business. So you're a fan also?
Yeah, I really like that. I think it helped us to really turn our expenses on their head. His main thing is it shouldn't be that income minus expenses equals profit. It's the other way around. Is income minus profit equals expenses.
Totally. Totally. So everybody listening, that's another book recommendation is Profit First. It really, he's so funny too as a writer, and I'm in a group where he's in too, so I'm able to kind of have some connection to him, and the way he writes made the subject material so fun to read, even though there were moments and I'm just like, it was like painful because you realize some of the things that you've been doing, how, your eyes were closed and you love the work so much that you're just this martyr, and you realize you don't have to be, and you need to be a smart businesswoman. So I know we're getting to the end of our time here, but I wanted to get more of just a sense of like, how is your business shaped now? Like how does Natalie Morris LLC make money? Like, what is your revenue model? You left that corporate life behind. You really realize like personal finance is your thing. You love it. And so what is your business now?
So if you go to Morris Invest, that's where morrisinvest.com is where we help other real estate investors learn to become real estate investors, how to set up their lives and their families like a business. And then we help them identify off-market properties in whatever market they choose. Right now we're in 5 markets, I think. And so we can help bring people through that process, but that company really is my husband's baby, and I'm like the CFO. I'm the person behind it who can make it work, and that's why we're a good partnership, because I love the spreadsheets, and he right now is actually in Indiana looking at our properties right now, and helping, going with his team to help other people identify properties. He's really good at that. I do not want to do that. I don't like it. I don't want to walk through properties, and I get bored really easily. And so a lot of my work goes into Morris Invest. So a lot of it's a big educational piece, because when someone's raised their hand and said, I do believe real estate is the best way to passive income, they don't know where to start. And I remember doing that when I was at CBS before I was married, and I was like, oh, I got a good salary. Maybe I should invest some in real estate. And I did like a Google search, and I got about 4 clicks in, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so we have a podcast. It's called Investing in Real Estate with Clayton Morris. And the only reason I'm not on the marquee is because I only do Wednesdays. And he does interviews on Mondays and Tuesdays with other people. So on Wednesdays is really he and I talking about how we make it work as a family. Like this new strategy, how we found this money, we did this private loan when we did this, so we really help other people understand how a family really makes passive income their business. And then on my own site, I do writing, because not everybody has the stomach for real estate. I understand that. And I want people who don't have the guts for it to still be able to rock out their finances like a full-time job and treat their family wealth building like a career, like a business, and like a team. And so I keep my site, nataliemorris.com, for anybody to start to speak the language of personal finance. And it tends to be pretty women focused, because I noticed when I left CBS and you're at the playground that so many of these women are like, oh, I just manage passwords. I just pay the bills. And too often women don't give themselves enough credit for what they could do. Right. Because I did it. I didn't have any training for that. Right. And I don't want women going on Pinterest and figuring out how to save money, because that contracts your life. I want women instead going online and figuring out how to expand money. The very opposite. So in the new year, you know, my youngest, she's only 1. So I've done a few speaking engagements, but I'd really like to get my message out there that, you know, you can do so much more than bill pay. You're capable of doing this because I did. And that finance takes creativity, and you have to go to your budget and your balance sheet, figure out what you've got, and be better at it. We all can.
Yes. When you have a book coming out?
Yeah, you know what? I think I've been struggling with like the idea of how to do it.
There.
Until like around Christmas. My husband and I really like, we take the holidays to really talk to each other about direction and what do we want. And my husband, his birthday is New Year's Eve. So he really gets a fresh start. So it's like, we take it seriously.
Yes.
And I was like, I think this is the book. It's showing people how to take their own balance sheet and like blow it up line by line. Because so many finance books have something for you to like have one method, one philosophy. And I think the biggest lesson for me when I really started to create wealth and study wealth is that wealth takes creativity. And if you're like, oh, I just do what the commercials tell me to do, I just automate these payments to savings and contribute the max to my 401k, and you're not building wealth. You're not getting anywhere, really. You're not getting anywhere that you're going to live off anyway. And we both had 6-figure jobs, and we're doing those things, and we weren't anywhere near retirement.
That's what I did read, The Millionaire Next Door. If you read that one. Yeah. And that's what it said. Most millionaires didn't have the 6-figure jobs. They were being intelligent about what they did have, making it expand, making it stretch.
Right.
So your message is right on. And I know that book, I'm like, I can just tell. I'm like, oh yeah, that's
I'm ready, but
it'll come. You let me know and we'll have you back on once.
I had, you know, Laura Lynn Jackson, she wrote The Light Between Us. She's an amazing psychic. And she was telling me, she's like, you're not ready to like go full on the speaking circuit until she's 3, because the baby's only 1.
Yes.
She's like, you got to wait a little bit. So we met her through a segment that Clayton was doing on Fox. And she's amazing. She's one of, not to get too far into this, but
totally.
There's an institute in Colorado that actually scientifically verifies psychic mediums. And there's been 20 in the world that they've done quadruple blind studies that they've been able to scientifically verify these people know what they say that they know. So the scientists don't know who they're reading, and neither does the psychic. And actually the person being read, the sitter, doesn't know that either. And then they verify, like, did she say things that, you know, or he. And so she's one of 20 scientifically verified psychics.
I'm totally into all that. So
yeah, she's amazing. Read her book, The Light Between.
The Light Between.
The Light Between Us. So anyway, but she, I was just talking to her as a friend because she predicted my 3rd child. And I was like, oh no, I'm not having a 3rd child. And so and she was just like, oh, you know, you have a book coming out, and it's like a Rich Dad, Poor Dad kind of thing. But so for now, I'm happy to do podcasts and writing and small
totally. Books. And this is what, because I have a book, and I can tell when somebody has that in them, and it's like, this is how it gets born. It's like, it all just starts bubbling up. You talk about things, and all of a sudden it's the flash. And prior to me doing this, I produced conferences. So I booked speakers. Okay. And so the ones that we tended to book, professional speakers anyway, they all had books.
Yeah.
They all had books. And so it's like, when you look at the pieces, it's like, okay, that will be a piece of your, that'll be a piece of your story. Oh my gosh. Well, I could talk to you forever. However, we've got to come to our finale. And the question that I always ask my guests is this. I'm excited to hear your answer, Natalie. What is the gutsiest move you've ever made, and how does it inspire your life and work today?
I think probably the way I handled the Me Too moment, I'm proud of that. Like I said, it wasn't as loud as I could have said, you know, that this was unacceptable, but I am proud of it because it's the thing that pivoted my life the biggest. And then also the fact that I moved to New York in the first place. I was 29. I knew nobody on the East Coast.
Oh, you went at 29. Yeah.
And I was alone. Right. And I told my dad's like, well, these are marriageable years. Just, you better come back. And then I met my husband 6 weeks later, because I was like, no, I'll be there for 3 years. And then I'm going to come home. And then there was, I think it was like 9 weeks later, I met my husband. And
nice.
I don't think I'm coming back. But I can't remember. Do you ever look back at decisions in your life and you're like, where was I emotionally to make that decision? Because I can't relate to however brave I was to do that alone.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's like, I look back because I had my New York moment. I did an internship after my junior year in college. I grew up in Florida. So you, California, me, Florida.
Yeah.
I was like, I knew like a handful of people in New York. It wasn't like everyone I graduated with was going to New York. Like, no, nobody was except for like 5 people. Okay.
Yeah.
And once I did the internship, I was scared out of my mind the first few weeks. I'm like, what is this place? You know, I was 21.
Yeah.
And then the same company hired me back upon graduation. It was like, you know, global PR firm. I was working on major clients, you know, traveling and all that. And I drove a U-Haul.
Oh my gosh.
Florida to New York City. My parents were like, you can't do that. I'm like, oh yeah, I can.
Yeah.
And I did. Because I like needed to have some of my stuff, you know, like I needed that to feel like I'm bringing some things with me. Like it's not totally going out on this limb and like, don't have anything to kind of ground into. But yeah, they're those gutsy moves. Like, so they make us who we are. You met your husband. I met my husband a few years after me being in New York. And it's just, and that's why I call this podcast Get Gutsy. That's the name of my first book, Get Gutsy, because it's those gutsy moves, those abilities to feel into our body and to just do it. Even when people tell you you're nuts and this marriageable years and how's that all going to work out? And you just go for it.
Yeah. I wish I could like emotionally connect with Natalie at 29 and be like, how'd you do that? You know, because I think it was so brave. And there are times now when you get older and you have kids, you get a little bit more scared because you're protecting your brand, or your brood. Right. And I understand that there's like a psychological reason, physiological reason for that. But sometimes like if you really study quantum physics and talks about how time is not linear, it's like, how time all exists like a ribbon in a box. Yes. And so I sometimes think about that and I'm like, I want to connect with that old Natalie and think like, what did you have in there? Like, I hope I still have it.
You do. Do you have I'm sure you have photos. Like get out some photo books.
I do actually. Well, because I was on the air so much back then, I have tons of video of myself, you know, and I look at myself, I'm like, wow, that was neat. It's really hard. I mean, so much of your identity changes when you become this matriarch.
Yes. Yes.
Totally. And so it's hard to relate to myself then anyway.
It does. I actually just was with a girlfriend who I met in college, and she was a real visionary and somebody who changed my life because she encouraged me to go to New York. She was a year older than me, like superstar. We were both like leaders in the PR, you know, space. And I hadn't seen her in more than 15 years. And I was just down in Virginia. I actually homeschool my sons and a whole another road I'd never thought I'd be on. She homeschools her kids. And we, again, hadn't seen each other in so long. And we happened to be in Virginia for my husband's work. We got together, and just by us being together, again, person from my past, you know, of just like the sparks were flying. When I got home, I pulled out my photo albums, like, let me find those pictures from us from way back. And seeing again, you kind of look into your own eyes, like, what was that thing I had then? I still have it. You know, again, we change. We're mothers now. We have different things going on. Our career has pivoted. But I think what you brought up is a very powerful exercise that we can all play with, you know, to kind of go back and like, what was it that I brought with me that maybe I can still, you know, tap into in a different form that can inspire you when you're faced with an important decision that is freaking you out.
Yeah. I think that's great. What a great like little trick because, you know, sometimes I hear myself talking to my kids and I'm like, I'm a more fun person than this. Like, don't be her. Be that person, you know?
Yes.
And so, and I can get out of it pretty easily. And I guess sometimes you think like, oh, that's gone in me, but it's really not. Like it was with me all along. It's my choice, you know?
Yeah. And I think you have to remember that too. And this will be the final point we end on is like, okay, we're moms now and we're this and we're that, but we don't have to subscribe to a certain like descriptor around that. You know, we're still allowed to be spontaneous. We're still allowed, like, you know what, sometimes we're having breakfast for dinner tonight, kids, you know, like that's just what it's going to be. And
getting crazy.
It's okay. You know, like we're still good. We're good people and it's all going to work out.
Yeah.
So, you know, this was so awesome to talk to you. You know, some of my guests I like have personal experiences with, but I don't with you. And I'm really happy to have talked to you, and thank you for your visibility and your vulnerability and just everything that you're doing. You've given me a lot of food for thought, money for thought.
Yeah, I hope so. And I appreciate it because, you know, if I can't get out on the speaking circuit just yet, and I got to wean this baby. I mean, I'm like,
girl, well, I'm calling you girl, but my girl, I got a 3-year-old and she still does moomies sometimes. She calls it.
And I'm like, I don't want to do that. Okay, once a day, but like, come on, she's 16 months. So, and I just don't remember how I weaned the other two. I don't remember it being.
Well, they're each different. They're
Yeah.
each different. And some, like my son, who he's now 6.5, like he would probably still be nursing now. But my daughter was born when he was 3. He bolted into the room like a few days after she was born. He was mad, you know.
Yeah, he's like, those are mine.
He goes, he called it mooies. He goes, I want mooies. And like in the middle of the night, I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, it's visceral, it's primal. That's another thing we need to remember as women. We are primal creatures. I'll give you a little book recommendations. You gave me so many. Women Who Run with the Wolves. You ever read that one?
No.
Okay. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, PhD. Okay. Out for a few decades now. I had her poster on my wall in freaking college. And I remember being like, oh my God, like the words were so powerful. It was a beautiful poster, you know, back in the day with posters up. And I hadn't read the book. And I just gifted, I have a mastermind for, you know, spiritual entrepreneurs. And I gifted it to all my clients because it was also a reason that I was going to read it now too. It's a very thick read, but especially with what's happening now, you know, the Me Too, everything.
Yeah.
Oh my,
Interesting.
Danielle Laporte, I had a call with her last year and she was like, a very close, someone who she really respects said there were 2 books that every woman must read. And one was Women Who Run with the Wolves. And
all right.
So I was like, all right, well, just, you know, further proof that I needed to read it. So anyway, but it's just what this is like women, we need to really tap into that.
Yeah.
And not get so like rigid and like, this is what I'm supposed to do now. Like we have that wild nature. That's what got you to New York. That's what got me to New York. And look at your life now. Look at my life now. You know, it's like, we can't forget that just because we're moms and responsible.
And also it's not my timeline, because if time is not even relative, it may feel to me like I don't have enough speaking gigs. I don't have, you know, but it's not a matter of enough though, you know, because I can sit here in my unfinished office.
Yes.
Anyone who's listening and hopefully make a change in their thought process.
You will. You will.
So right now it's about getting my message out however it works.
Yes.
And, you know, if I can't wean the baby, I got to stay home. And when I wean the baby, I will go and find as many people who will listen to me and help them understand that what the financial commercials during Super Bowl Sunday want you to think is the opposite of what you need to think.
Oh, girl, you need to get that one out. That is, well, yes, oh my gosh, thank you. Because we're recording the Super Bowl's almost here. You have a very powerful message, and it really is. I mean, I'm not here to bash the patriarchy, but sometimes I am. That so much of that is just gotten shoved down our throats, and we bought it, you know, and we bought it. And so you're here to say, think again. All right. And let me tell you, and you have the personal experience. You're not just giving theory. You've actually put it into play. And that's what makes you, again, my background as like somebody who books speakers, very, very powerful. And the podcast world is a very, it's a perfect thing for you right now.
Yeah.
You know? And going forward, even when you do have more of the speaking gigs, it's like the podcast. I've touched so many people because I'm a guest on people's podcasts too. And, you know, how lucky are we as moms who want to be there with our kids, but also make an impact with our work, that this medium exists.
Exactly. I'm really grateful for it. And, you know, one of the things about writing on my own blog is to show people, don't do it my way. Watch me doing it my way and get inspired to do it your way.
Yes. Oh, girl. Thank you so much, Natalie. You are an amazing woman, amazing mother, amazing wife, and amazing visionary. I can feel that very, very deeply. Everybody tuning in, thank you so much for being here. This is Jenny Fennick sending you so much love, light, and faith as you get gutsy. See you next time.